Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. I'm your host, Eric Lee.
And I'm Liz Williams.
Yay, Liz Williams calling in from New Orleans. So this is episode 62, and this is sort of we are squarely in Liz's wheelhouse right now. I think as we described in our Overlook Film Festival podcast extra, Liz and I met at the festival, and fairly soon actually it took a little while before I figured out that she was a big book fan, but we found out that we had we had horror movies in common, and then we found out that we had mutual friends in common all the way out here in Portland.
It was meant to be.
Yep.
And then Eric said, "Hey, do you read books?" I was like, "Do I? Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I love it, and I love to read horror books."
Because one of the things that I realized is as we started branching out, because we started out with a podcast first. Mike Campbell, who is doing his Mother's Day duty, being a good son, taking his mother and his sons out for a Mother's Day dinner. So that left the cats away, and Liz and Eric can play. And I think we had originally set out just to do a podcast. And then the podcast we realized nobody's listening to us. And we realized, okay, maybe we need to start up a website. And then when I got the website going, it's like, all right, this is working, but we need more content. And we don't want to just be about movies. We kind of want to be about short films, and we want to be about infographics, and we want to be about books. And so we have a Scariest Things Facebook group. It's a small but active and chatty group. If you're interested.
An elite group, Eric. Small but elite group.
It is the farthest thing from being elite. But hello to all of our friends who are on the chat, because I know that many of them are some of our most ardent listeners. But I realized that one weakness that I had in my arsenal is I wasn't particularly good about having read a lot of horror novels. And I thought that it would be great to have a sort of a one-stop shopping kind of a website thing. And I put out the message on our Friends of Scariest Things page and said, who here reads novels, the horror novels? And Liz apparently has got a wealth of that. And I think one of the crazy things is, Liz, that I think there's a lot of horror authors who live in New Orleans or in the South.
Yeah, there are. We have a lot down here in the South. Most famously in New Orleans is Anne Rice, obviously. Vampire Lestat and all of that. Her son, Chris Rice, is also a writer who writes horror books. We have Poppy Z. Bright. I believe he's still here. And then, of course, there's some great ones that I'm not going to touch on tonight. So I'll just say, like Charlene Harris and the Suki Stackhouse novels, a lot of things that take place down in the bayou. It lends itself to horror very, very well. I think it's the heat.
Well, in Portland,
makes people a little crazy.
we are the home of a lot of comic book authors and artists up in the Portland area. But I don't think there's any notable horror authors from our neck of the woods. Are you aware of any Pacific Northwest horror novelists?
No, but now I'm going to find some. Challenge. I know there's a Dark Regions Press is a really cool horror press that does some special editions of things, and I believe they are based in Portland.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yep.
And I guess the other area that produces a whole boatload of horror authors is New England, of course.
Yeah.
For all of the obvious reasons, dating all the way back to Edgar Allan Poe. Actually, Poe was Baltimore, right?
Poe was Baltimore, but I think that you've got your cold, your isolation, you got your witch trials up there.
Yep.
Down in the South, it's hot, and it seems like areas of extremes are always going to pull out the horror.
Yeah, not much extreme about Portland, except for maybe our dietary sense. So
Yes,
it's
that's
like,
true.
I hope you guys like kale. So anyhow, so tonight we're going to be talking about the best horror adaptations, or some of our favorite adaptations from novel to movie. And I think there's a really proud tradition in horror movies dating all the way back to the golden age, where all the old Universal monsters and those stories, they all came from, they weren't original tales. Frankenstein, of course, Mary Shelley. You had Bram Stoker's Dracula. You had H.G. Wells. You had a lot of the 18th century Edwardian authors got to see their works actually hit the screen first.
Yes.
And I think that by the time you got to the 50s, you started seeing with the atomic stompy monsters, those. Although I guess you still had War of the Worlds, you had another H.G. Wells thing come out, but then the original stories started coming out. But it's I think some of our biggest movies are associated also with books, and
Oh yeah, I mean, so many of our top 100:
right.
Exorcist, Jaws, Amityville. I mean,
Rosemary's Baby.
like Rosemary's Baby.
Yep.
So many things are based on books, and I just think really when you're reading something, your imagination, especially now, is casting who's going to play what and how would they put the. So you want to see things adapted when someone reads something. When a book's coming out, you're already hearing now about like who's optioned it a lot of times.
Yeah.
So when people love it, though, I think it's a love letter to the book. If you love it and you want to adapt it, just hopefully you do a good job, because there's probably not anything worse than doing a real crappy job of adapting a book that you love.
I hope I'm not spoiling anything here, but what do you think of the It cast and how that relative to did you read the novel?
I never read the novel. I attempted it, and I attempted the audiobook. That is just that's a big doorstop. And I'm going to be honest, I have only read 2 Stephen King novels, and they are, I think, his shortest, Christine and Carrie.
Okay.
I don't shy away from a big book, but his writing style is not my personal favorite. Mm-hmm. I like descriptions and things, but sometimes you don't need like 30 pages of descriptions. So sometimes, again, brevity is harder than writing something long.
Yeah, I think.
A good 250 to 350 pages is like kind of where I want to be. Of course, I'll read shorter, and I will definitely read longer. Some of my favorite books, not actually horror, are big tomes, but it's hard. Especially, doing book reports and stuff for the website. It's hard. You can watch a lot of movies in a day when you might only be able to read one book. It's hard.
as Mike and I have found out, it's not hard just to start your binge on a Thursday, end on a Sunday, and you'll feel like you're an expert about the subject material by the time you actually have to talk about it. You can't do that with books. It's just it's a challenge, and it's also one of the reasons why Liz has been my cavalry, and for all of you who are clever enough to figure out how to get to our website, you should go to our book report section and check out all of Liz's book recommendations. We've got I think we've got what do we have, 12 to 15 books at least?
I think so. Yes, definitely. Please go read them. They are definitely more reports than reviews. I'm never going to spoil, because that takes away the fun. And they're all books, or actually most of them are books that I love. Luckily, I think I only have 2 reviews of things that I have just not enjoyed, but I am someone who puts something down. I will turn off the movie. I will put down the book. Life is too short, and there's too much content out there. So
and there's not
a lot of times I'm not going to finish it. So you are not going to have to read a report about a book that is absolutely terrible. Yep. So my recommendations will usually be things that I've really, really enjoyed.
So there you go, folks. Yeah, this is you don't have to. Whereas a movie, again, that's kind of you would we'll write some fairly scathing reviews for movies to make you avoid dropping the $3 on Netflix or something like that. But
Yeah.
a book is an investment of your time.
It is, and that's the most
right.
important, I think.
So with that, why don't we get started? Liz, as the less frequent host, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with what on your Fearsome Foursome, what your number 4 book is?
Well, so I did not stick to books that I had to have read. I am going to assume that the adaptations, I did a little research, but I went on really, if it was a book and it was adapted into something I wanted to watch or something I didn't like watching, I went that way. So of my 4, my Fearsome Foursome, I have read 2. This one, number 4, is one I have not read, but I kind of thought it was a good choice because I wanted to talk about this movie, and it is adapted from a book that is loosely based on a real life story, and that is the 1988 David Cronenberg film Dead Ringers.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, Dead Ringers is actually loosely based on a book called Twins by Barry Wood and Jack Giesland that was put out in 1977. And it was based on the real life story of twin gynecologists, Stuart and Cyril Marcus, who were found dead in one of their apartments from like a mutual barbiturate overdose. So roll twin gynecologists and barbiturates into Cronenberg, and you get one of the most frightening psychological horror movies I think has ever been made.
This one was a real close miss for me when we did a discussion of medical horror.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly why I wanted to bring it up, because I was like yelling like Dead Ringers.
Now you got your chance. I'm really glad you
now
brought this
I get
one up
my
because
chance.
I think this is one of the, it's one of Cronenberg's more forgotten movies because it's very weird and very strange, but it's not body horror in the way that, say, Videodrome or The Fly or The Brood are, which are more spectacular in that way. But, Cronenberg has even when he's not delving into body transformation in that way, still goes
it's still body horror. This is like maybe capital H, lowercase h body horror, where his other ones are capital H body horror, but any woman who says this movie does not scare them is full of shit. So, there's no way.
Right.
So this movie is about the twin gynecologists named Beverly and Elliot Mantle, and they're both played by Jeremy Irons.
Fantastic.
He's
Jeremy
amazing.
Irons.
He is fantastic. And they are close twins. They live together. They share women without the women knowing them. And one of them falls in love with an actress named Claire. And when she goes away to shoot a movie, he thinks she's cheating on him. So he falls into this like crazy depression spiral and develops a serious drug habit. So that's Beverly. Not to be left out, his brother also develops a drug habit.
I was going to say, it's like,
yeah,
because that would be a giveaway if one of them starts rapidly deteriorating from drug abuse and the other one doesn't.
So yeah, don't worry. They're
mutual
twins. They're going to share that too.
Degeneracy.
And kind of like in their downward spiral, one of them like goes to a sculptor to like make these gynecological instruments that look like torture devices and crazy like H.R. Giger looking things.
Ugh.
And it just goes down a path that you don't want to go down.
Yeah, you're not putting that in me.
Yeah, no. And it is horrifying. And Cronenberg, they're in their operating suite before they're getting real crazy. And they're not wearing like green scrubs like Grey's Anatomy, where they're wearing these like blood red head to toe outfits with masks that cover everything except for their nose and their eyes that are red. I don't know. Anybody who goes to that doctor, they're fertility doctors. You've got to be desperate to have a baby to stay in there once you see these
did
guys,
they have
so.
Now? It's been a long time since I've seen Dead Ringers, but did they?
It holds up. I just watched it again. Yeah.
Okay, so was there? Did they develop any tells?
where you could tell the difference between them.
Yeah, because you with these kinds of because it reminds me of a non-horror movie, The Prestige. Where I think
Great movie.
where you have sort of twins, sort of duplicitously doing sneaky things, and because and it's an old trope, right? The evil twin, but in this case, they're both evil twins.
One's definitely more evil than the other, and so like Claire, the girlfriend, can tell the difference after a while. She definitely couldn't at the first, but they do have dramatically different personalities. One is much shyer, the other one is much more outgoing and suave, and he's the one that brings the ladies in, and then gives them to his brother, who is like, "You would never gotten laid without me." So it's a all in all, it is not a good situation for the ladies in this movie at all. It is utterly terrifying and something that has stuck with me. So when I saw this one was based on a book, I knew it was loosely based on a true story of these doctors. I was like, yep, this is going to be number 4. Got to get Dead Ringers on the podcast.
Sweet.
It's horrifying.
Now, is this one of those ones that you like watch the movie, know it's based on a book, but I'm not going to touch the book?
Yeah, I don't know what else the book could offer me that Cronenberg didn't, because I think he went, the book was based on these two guys, but it was just loosely based. I think Cronenberg then said, oh, I like that idea. Yep. Let's turn it up to 11.
Yeah,
so
you kind of wonder in his personal life if Cronenberg's much of a sexual deviant, because he's
I can't. I don't know.
A lot of his stuff, like Crash, which dealt with like getting turned on with car wrecks. He's
also based on a book.
Yeah, he's got a lot, or things like Existence, and the things where it's just these weird. The merging of flesh and technology. He's got some strange stuff going on. It makes you wonder. Like H.R. Giger is a guy who had he was, I think, like his sort of sick sense of art. I think he was also a bit of a sexual deviant, from what I think.
Yeah, David Cronenberg. Body horror to me is like one of those. Some of those go bridge too far. I can't take that. It makes me squirm. I don't like it. So this one is probably the amount that I can watch. Okay. But oh man, is it uncomfortable? Okay. Oh yeah.
So
Dead Ringers.
Dead Ringers. Liz's number 4, and for my number 4, and I took a bit of a different approach. And it's classic. Welcome to Scariest Things. Sometimes the moderators don't necessarily come up with the exact same criteria, but I think it makes it more interesting for you guys because you can get a sense of what we do. I took the track of only listing movies of which I have both read the book and watch the movie. So and again, full admission, I don't read enough of the books. I watch plenty of the movies, but there are some.
So we know we're not getting Carrie, Eric. That's
I'm never going to escape that. One of these days, I will have to watch that, and I'll actually claim or I can just let it be the running joke.
Yes, I think it has to
be. So I'm going back to 2014 for a book that. I couldn't resist picking up off the shelves. And this was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer.
Yeah.
I had seen a lot of notes on it and how people said how smart it was, how challenging it was, how mind expanding it was. And I'll tell you, it was a hard read. It is, but it's a book by Farrar, Straus and Giroux, a publisher who I'm not really familiar with. It's only 195 pages, so it wasn't. But I ended up having to flip back and forth because it's very loopy. And loopy in the way of time sequences. And the thought process. It's a non-linear way of thinking about a plot.
It is also a tough audiobook. I did it on audiobook, and I was like, I don't really know if I just got that, but
yeah, no, I have done. I will admit that I've done all 3. I read the book, listened to the audiobook, watched the movie, The movie makes it clean.
Yes, yes, I agree.
But that said, I don't want to take away from what Vandermeer had done with the book itself. He took some really bold steps. He didn't name his characters. I mean, that's like who doesn't do that? I mean,
Right.
that's very strange. So the narrator, and I guess in the end it didn't matter too much because about halfway through the book, you've only got one character left, and it's your narrator, and she's a biologist. In the movie, it's Natalie Portman and Alex Garland wisely, though he does not play up the names very much, named all the characters. So Natalie plays Lena, who is the biologist. Jennifer Jason Leigh is Dr. Ventress, the psychologist and the team leader. Gina Rodriguez is Anya, who is a paramedic, and she's sort of the tough girl. But she's a character new to the book compared to the book. Tessa Thompson plays Josie, who in the book would have been the anthropologist, actually named the anthropologist, and in the movie she's a physicist. And then Tuva Novotny plays Cass, who is in the book was called the surveyor, and in here her profession is the geomorphologist. That's a long way of saying that Alex Garland had asked and received permission from Vandermeer to expand upon it to make it more accessible. And even when he had done that, the early screenings were too much for people. They couldn't figure it out. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is a 2018 movie that was critically lauded, and this is one of those kind of divisive pictures because it is so heady. It's like 2001, right? Did you see
good comparison?
Did you see the movie?
I did, and it's also a rare case where I think I probably preferred the movie for cleaning it up a little bit for me.
right. And I was fascinated with the book, but I just didn't get it. Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure where Vandermeer was going with his storytelling, and when Garland presents it to you visually, it is still embracing. It's bizarre. You get the shimmer is a strange thing. The fact that you have these animal and plant mutations, and actually that you have an alligator with fish characteristics and a deer with flower characteristics, and then this bear skeleton screaming thing, which was pure nightmare fuel. That thing was nasty. And actually seeing those things realized helped me understand what that they were talking about, sort of the state of human evolution, sort of as far as a biological ascendancy and more of a soul transcendency, and how these things, the identity of self and duplication and clones, and it's all very trippy, heady stuff. Beautifully done, perfect director to do it. It is and even though I said that the movie clears a bunch of things up, it is still not an easy movie to figure out.
Yeah, it's still not easy to get. So you said you read the other two, because I know it's kind of referred to as the Southern Reach trilogy.
Oh, no, yeah.
So Annihilation, Acceptance, and
what is the other one?
Something else in the middle.
I will admit that because I struggled with the first book, I waited to see what the movie was going to do, and if I can piece that together, how I can go forward with it. The movie deviated enough from the book itself, where the book ends with sort of an open-ended statement, and she's waiting at the lighthouse.
Right. Okay. Right? That's what I was going to say. Did the book did the movie bring in the other books, or
not really? No. And that was where Garland got permission from Vandermeer to tweak his script. It's a book dealing with abstracts and the scientific mutation and the philosophy of science. It's a very and I think that there were some people who just gobbled that stuff up. And then I would get the sense that there's a bunch of people who just put the book down halfway through and go, I give up. So, I think kudos to anybody who's made it through the book. You probably either found something, probably better if you had to drop the tab of acid to try and do it. You'd probably figure this thing out a little bit better. But anyways, I was impressed by the book, but I enjoyed the movie, and I think there's and the movie also impressed. So I thought that was fairly interesting, actually, if you want to say an evolution of book to movie, appropriate for this kind of a story. So, anyways,
Good one. Good. Yeah. Good choice.
I was fairly clever that way.
Good choice.
All right, so Liz, what have you got for your number 3?
Okay, so in my next choice, I have read this book, but I kind of strayed from the movie. So I'm going to recommend Dexter, the horror TV show, which is based on the Dexter novels by Jeff Lindsay, mainly Darkly Dreaming Dexter, which is the first, and season 1 pretty much follows that novel. So, Dexter, for anybody who hasn't seen it, is a show. It was on Showtime, started in 2006 and went on for about 6 years.
It was one of the biggest things that Showtime had on the air.
It was huge. It's Michael C. Hall is Dexter Morgan, who's a blood spatter analyst for the Miami Police Department. He is also a serial killer, but he lives by this dark code because he was adopted by a cop named Harry, who taught him, they call it his dark passenger, to try to tame his dark passenger and only kill bad people. So Michael C. Hall plays Dexter. Jennifer Carpenter, of other horror movie fame, plays Deb, his sister, and she is also a cop. So it's that fine line of like, oh my God, are they going to figure out Dexter? Right. A lot of keep you on the edge of your seat. Is he going to get caught? It's black comedy, Blackest of the Black. It's hilarious, and it has a wonderful cast of characters. And so the first season followed the plot of Darkly Dreaming Dexter with a few changes, but they had the ice truck killer, and that was called the Miami killer in the main thing. But they kept it set in Miami. They kept the characters' names, and then in the following seasons went away from the book series and had huge guest stars like John Lithgow and Jimmy Smits playing killers in some of them. It's really a cool way to see some of these actors go really dark who you don't expect to go dark.
Yeah, this was, it kind of reminds me in a funny way of even like Batman. It's like that. This is where, if there's this code of honor, and yet it's really, or maybe the Punisher, right? More. It's like there was something kind of comic booky about Dexter, and that.
Well, his elaborate kill rooms, he would cover the whole room in tarps and saran wrap, and have the person saran wrapped on a table, because he was a blood spatter expert, right. So he didn't want to get the splatter everywhere.
No, and that was part of the fun of it, is that he's, it is really, can he outthink the people that he works with?
Yeah.
And it's brilliant, and the fact that it's one of those classic other things where the serial killer you would never expect, the handsome guy. And who can bury his sociopathy in his professionalism.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So that's a good pull.
They're doing so much in TV now that. We have to talk. There's so much awesome horror TV, and that's a really great way to adapt stuff. So
one of my all-time favorite horror books got the first class treatment this year, and that is Dan Simmons. And this isn't one of my favorites. I wasn't thinking of this at the time, but I was, and I decided to stick within feature films, but.
I went outside the lines. I colored outside the lines tonight.
Right, but The Terror, which was on AMC.
AMC.
Oh my gosh! It was Ridley Scott produced, and it was, as a period piece drama, it was spectacular. As a tragic life lesson of the hubris of man, it was fabulous. It would, even without the monster, it would have been a great series and a great story. it's a true story about Arctic adventurers who pushed on despite all the warnings not to,
Yeah.
and died. Everybody died. They found the ships recently in the last 5 years. They have unearthed both the Erebus and the Terror in because of global warming. That the ice pack is melted, and they found the ships. So.
What's funny is that's also another book that I could not finish.
Oh, really? Oh, God.
Yeah, I loved the show, but I couldn't finish the book.
No, the book. Yeah, that's another doorstop, as you call it. It's a monster.
It is.
But I did the audiobook for that one. So that accompanied me on many work trips up to Seattle and back again. So
yeah, you need a long drive for those.
Right. So anyway, so that wasn't intended to be my number 3, but my actual number 3. So I actually have read a few Stephen King novels. Also, I also am not a huge Stephen King fan. I think sometimes he makes too many pop culture references to date stamp his books, I think. But I was really impressed, and I think as a window into who he is, with the 1987 book Misery.
Yes.
And, I think one thing that he was clearly, I think authors tend to like to write about other authors. I mean, Lovecraft would do it. Certainly Stephen King's done it on a number of occasions where the protagonist is a writer. Write about what you know, as they say. And so they know, the industry of being a famous author. And in this case, this is for those of you, and actually the interesting thing is enough time has passed that there may be a number of our viewers who are not aware of Misery, either the book or the movie. But the movie was done in 1990 in a very short. This is peak Stephen King, right? This is when he was coming out with hit after hit after hit, and it was like, I think Dark Tower was out. I think It was out. Misery. A Pet Cemetery. He was riding high and riding a wave of success. And he tried to do a book series called The Eyes of the Dragon, which was a fantasy novel. And he took a lot of heat for that. That his fans really revolted and were not kind to him when he decided that he was going to try a different genre and stray outside of his boundaries. And so part of the whole notion of the Paul, who is the author, right. He was a romantic, like a Victorian romance novelist, and he made a switch to going into to crime noir. And the story is that Paul crashes on his way home in a blizzard, and he is quote unquote rescued by Annie Wilkes. And this is a case where actually the book and the movie are synchronous. They are very, very close. I think there is one scene that that they changed up, which I I loved in the book, where she kills in order to. I need to back up again. For those of you who aren't familiar with Misery, Annie is a nurse, and she is also. I'm your biggest fan. She is a huge fangirl of Paul's, and he's badly hurt, and so she's convalescing him, and then she finds out that he is trying to get out of doing those romance novels and is planning to end the stories of his character Misery, and she's not going to have it. She's not going to let her favorite characters go away, and I think in this day and age, right? So we have I don't know if you're a Game of Thrones fan, or
Indeed.
or if you're a Star Wars fan, or if you're a DC Comics fan, or pretty much anything with a large genre cult fan base. Right now, the environment is toxic. It
sure is.
You do not want to weigh in on a fan page right now, because apparently if you, the writer, if you, the director, do not adhere to what they want as a as a direction for the series, you're terrible and you should be fired, or they should be hunted down, and all this. There's a lot of crazy shit that's going on the internet nowadays, and I think this book predates that by 30 years. Sort of warns you about the pressure of fandom in a pre-internet era. This was like, I'm your biggest fan. And I'm sure someone like Rian Johnson, who's the director of Last Jedi, or I think and I think last week's, I haven't yet watched tonight's Game of Thrones because we've been recording. But the last
I haven't watched any of the new season. I wait till the end. I have to binge.
You did yourself a huge favor. It's been awesome so far. I've loved every episode. Last one's was a little bit. I think that there was a huge action set piece, and then there's like a pause before the big next action set piece. And some people weren't happy with the way it went, and they've been very vocal. And it's like, God.
I think that's like, I did not know the thing about Stephen King going to write possibly a fantasy novel, and that Misery is kind of his reflection on how the fans treated him. That's super interesting. And in Misery, the movie, Kathy Bates plays Annie, and James Caan plays the writer, and they're flawless.
Yes,
it is a great movie.
And the Paul Sheldon actually is the name of the full name of James Caan's character. But yeah, she is like a modern day super fan. And she just so happens to have captured.
You mean author. Rescued?
Yeah. No, I mean captured. She has. He is the unwilling prisoner. She has. And when he, as he's recovering, he's like, "Well, I think I'm about ready to leave." And she goes, "Oh no, you don't." And busts his ankles with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, that is one that's a scene that's unforgettable.
In the book, it was an axe, and she takes the foot clean off.
Oh my gosh!
And then cauterizes it with a blowtorch.
Woo! Okay. Yeah. So I had to tone down Stephen King a little bit for that R rating.
Still bad enough, right? And then there was like when the police come to investigate in the movie, she takes him out with a double-barreled shotgun. In the book, she takes him out with a riding lawnmower, which was like, I would have loved to have seen that. But
I wish that would have been a good one.
But that was perfectly effective, the double-barrel shotgun. And I think the other thing that King was talking about with this book was that he was going through opiate problems and alcohol and opiates, and I think that the pressure of being super successful was messing him up, and so that this also, because there was a lot of opiates that Paul Sheldon had to take in order for pain, that she would lord over him and only give him pain medication when she was in control of the situation, and later on Stephen King said this about Misery. He goes, "There was never any question. Annie was my drug problem, and she was my number one fan. She never wanted to leave." So Annie was a metaphor for his own addictions.
Wow, that's cool. Good choice.
Which is fascinating. So anyways, I think it's probably one of the more, I think, more revelatory pieces from King because it's autobiographical.
Yeah, I agree. That's cool. I did not know that. Awesome. All right, what am I on? Number 2. Yep. Okay. My number 2 choice is a 2017 Netflix movie called The Ritual.
Yay!
Based on the 2011 book by Adam Neville. This movie is my jam. This has everything that's in my wheelhouse.
It should be everybody's jam.
It is awesome. So The Ritual is about a group of 4 friends who go on a hike on the Norway-Sweden border after one of their friends is murdered in like a convenience store robbery. And they always go on like a guy's trip. And the friend who was killed wanted to go on this hike. Some of the rest of them were like, we want to go to Ibiza, or we want to, just go party. But so to honor him, they go on this hike. So anytime you have people going on a hike, first someone's going to injure themselves and slow down the group. Yep. Check. We got that. Then we're going to take a shortcut Check. We got that. What you don't always get is this gorgeous scenery, but also this like impending doom of these
Yes.
like Nordic cults. I love a cult, and I love like a ritual, wilderness, pagan kind of cult. So that is what you get on this one. So we've got our group of guys. We have Luke, Phil, Dom, and Hutch. And Hutch is kind of the like leader of the gang. He looks like the tough guy. He's got all the right gear.
Yep.
So they're like, oh, he knows where he's going. And after Dom hurts his leg, Hutch is like, okay, well, we're going to take this shortcut to get out of here faster because, this guy can't walk. So they're hearing noises in the woods. They come upon symbols carved into trees. And then they find this like body of a deer that's almost crucified on a tree, totally disemboweled. So they're freaking out.
Right.
Then, of course, it starts raining. Pouring rain. It's dark. It's pouring rain. Flashlights aren't working. So they find this abandoned cabin in the woods, and they break in.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best part. So they break into this cabin because they got to take shelter for the night. No one's feeling good about this. It's, they're a little freaked out. And they go upstairs in the cabin, and there's this, like, wicker torso
Freaky
with its
totem
arms
thing.
raved up, and it's got antlers for hands. It is freaky, but they gotta sleep. They can't go out in the night. So things start happening.
Sleep wasn't
coming
easy.
to them in their dreams. They are not sleeping well. One of them wakes up outside with like these puncture marks on his chest that are in a symbol that are matching what they see in the trees. So of course they head out the next morning thinking they're going to escape the forest, and they start getting picked off. It is so violent, so bloody, and you see glimpses of this creature. So you know that there is a creature in the woods.
Yeah.
But you don't know what kind of creature this is or where they're stumbling until
it's whatever it is, it's big.
It's big. It's real big. So when we were down to like two of our friends, they find a path. You don't follow a path lit by candles in the woods when you've been like,
this is only
not a path
only lead to
like
safety.
Something good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course they stumble upon this like Swedish village that is worshiping this descendant of Loki, bastard god, and it only gets worse from there. So it's not spoilers. You know you're going to see the creature, and you know that this is not going to be a great hike in the wilderness.
But boy, the reveal of that creature.
The reveal is
Jotun.
insane.
Yeah.
It is really, really cool creature. Great special effects. Terrifying.
I paused my DVR at that point.
Yeah,
It's like,
to take
just
a
to
look
look at
at
it. I was
it.
like, what the hell is that? Oh my God. What's that on its face? It's got hands on its face.
It's one of the coolest creatures. So I haven't read this book, but I'd actually probably really need to pick it up and see how he describes it in the book. He must have described it for the filmmaker to craft the creature like this. There's no doubt it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, but totally effective. Has, vibes of Kill List and Hereditary and Wicker Man and all those kind of like
Culty.
weird town people beating the drums, worshiping nature kind of things that is totally in my wheelhouse. So this movie, 5 stars. It's awesome. And definitely recommend it.
One of our other occasional writers, Amy, actually wrote a review of The Ritual of the book.
She did the book, yep.
And she loved the book so much, and she also loves the movie. So my guess here, Liz, is if you're if you're so inclined to pick up and read the book, you'd probably enjoy it as much as you enjoyed the movie, because
I think so.
If someone who loved the book so much also loved the movie, I think that would suggest a 1-to-1 match, so that plot-wise, and I don't know how much it varies between the two, to be honest.
I mean, it's a tight little story. I don't think the book is really long, probably about 200 pages, and the movie's, great, probably like hour and 40 minutes. So it's a tight story. So I'd probably guess that you're right, that it probably stays pretty close to the book.
Yep.
When you have really good source material, why veer? You
right.
know?
No,
Stick
absolutely. And that's sort of what we're talking about here. I think that it's one of those kind of brilliant sort of hold your good story close. So,
yes, exactly.
So my number 2 is it's an old there was a long time span between when the book was originally written and when the movie had come out, and the novella written in 1938 is Who Goes There by John W. Campbell.
Oh,
And if that doesn't ring a bell to all
it
of you
does
out
not.
there, the movie that it inspired was The Thing, and
Oh,
which is
wow.
this is my all-time favorite
Your
movie.
favorite.
Yeah, and you know, anybody listening to this podcast is going to have a working knowledge, at least, if not a true love and devotion to this movie. But I think what is remarkable is that in between Who Goes There 1938 and The Thing 1982, you had 1952's The Thing from Another World, which was certainly inspired by the Who Goes There novella, but they didn't do the key thing. I think what they had was a scientific research base with some military men in the Arctic uncovering a spaceship and an alien inside. And then it really didn't fulfill the promise of the novella. Now the novella, if Misery was 420 pages, which actually for a Stephen King book is fairly light.
Pretty short, yeah.
Who Goes There is 37 pages.
Oh, wow.
Really short. But it covers so much story in 37 pages. I remember, and I think the thing for me also with this is I read this when I was in junior high school. I was a kid. It was like a group of short science fiction stories. I think they also had a Robert Silverberg story and a Robert Ludlum piece in there. But it was mix of like scary science fiction stories all bundled up into one little novel, and I remember that Who Goes There. That scared the shit out of me. I mean, I was like, but I kept rereading it, and it was they actually kept a lot of the names from that book, McCready and Gary, Blair, Bennings, Clark, Copper. They kept a lot of the names, and oddly, for a book that's only 37 pages, it has like 25 characters in it, which is I think more of it. So it doesn't have a whole lot of character. It's not a character development story, and for that matter, neither is The Thing. But what it is, it's more of a discussion of group dynamics. It's sociology, not psychology. It's what happens when the bonds of trust are eliminated and there's an infection. There is something bad in your midst. What do you do? How do you handle it? And the John W. Campbell book goes there. And I think, oddly enough, actually the better predecessor or the development of this kind of a story would have been Invasion of the Body Snatchers. If we're talking about the 1950s movies, because it's the the kind of the Red Scare element, and who's that guy who's sitting next to me might not be who I think he is. And one of the great pieces that they did in the book that they don't do in the movie is there's an albatross, and there was like the first albatross of the winter arrives, and then it flies away, and they're shooting at it, because they're not sure if it had gotten infected by the thing, right? And and then they find that it was working on a spaceship trying to get away, and you realize like, what? It's like it's like, what happens if that albatross had gotten infected and gotten away? It was so beautifully done that way. And whereas in the movie, you have Kurt Russell and Keith David sort of staring at each other in the snow, saying, "Okay, you make a move," and then end credits. It has sort of that same kind of apocalyptic, you don't know what happens next kind of a thing, which was, I thought, a beautiful ending.
That's awesome. 37 pages. All right, I got to read that.
Yeah. And here's the thing: is oddly enough, now they have found within somebody unearthed the expanded manuscript called Frozen Hell. And they forwarded that along to Harvard University, and so a Kickstarter campaign was published to launch the full version of the book, because I think back in the day, I think there were a lot of pulp fiction authors would submit a short story to get included in these anthologies, and that's what this was. But he had a bigger story he wanted to tell, and they found it. And so that is now available. It was this year. It was just launched in January of this year. So if you want to check it out, and I probably want to do the same thing.
You probably want to check it out.
Yeah, I do. I didn't realize that it was just a little bit of research. It's like, oh, wow, a full version of the John Campbell book. So
there's more.
Yay!
Yeah, that's awesome. Yay. All right. Are we at my number one?
You're number one.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. So even though I just said if you have good source material, why stray from it? This one that I am about to pick as my number one strays from its source material.
Okay.
And I am picking, I'm also going kind of TV here. I am picking The Haunting of Hill House, the new Netflix series based on
The Haunting of Hill House.
The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson in 1954. So this book has gotten, I think, 4 adaptations. And the original, like in the 60s adaptation, is great and creepy. I know Mike loves it. We've talked about it on the podcast before.
The Haunting. Have you seen the Robert Wise?
And then there's that one from the 90s.
Yeah. Amy likes that one, but I don't.
It's not good.
No.
It's not good. But so Mike Flanagan did this series in 2018, and you can tell his love for this source material. He changes it up. He keeps character names and things like that, but it's really a story of a family who moves into the house because they're kind of like house flippers of the 80s, fixing it up, getting ready, and there you have 4 kids, and the house is speaking to one of them more than others. They have the twins, Nell and Luke. They have Steve, and they have Theodora, who wears gloves on her hands because she can kind of, psychically touch people, and then Shirley, the older sister. This Netflix series kind of like blew my mind. I loved it. This was everything I wanted in a ghost story and more. The cast is amazing. It's got Michael Huisman. It's got Timothy Hutton, Carla Gugino. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. Gugino. It's got Henry Thomas.
Oh,
from
John
E.T.
Boy.
Yes. So, we just split off there. We picked to reference Henry Thomas, but I loved it.
You're right. I'm sorry. You said Henry Thomas. So that,
Henry
E.T.
Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
E.T.
Wow.
Not C. Thomas Howell.
No, I'm thinking of someone else. So yeah, I stand. You have corrected me.
Yep, Henry Thomas. I am rewatching the series to talk about this. It's so good. I loved it. They played with how they play with time, how they, you'll open a door in one scene and you're walking into the same door years before in another house, things like that. And I mean, I don't know. Episode 6 is an episode called The Two Storms, and it is like one of the best hours of TV's I've ever seen. I think you won me over.
I think this is one of those things
it.
I've heard from other folks. And so for the tricky thing for doing this,
the ending, I mean, it does have a little bit of scene chewing. It has, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the actress who plays the caretaker. Oh shoot, I'm not going to remember it now. But there is a little bit of, things are creepy in the dark, in the night. It's things that are coming straight from the book that you're just like, oh, come on. And the ending, it does leave a little bit to be desired, but so does the book, I mean, so every movie, everything, you're just kind of like, I don't know, but 9 out of 10 on this one. I loved it. I loved this series. If you have not watched it,
Netflix, folks,
get on that couch and
everybody out there,
don't get off.
Yeah,
it's so good. I really, really liked it, and I just think that you can see Mike Flanagan's love for the source material. He wrote and directed it, and it's super creative. It takes the best pieces of it and then adapts it to something for today. And it's really a family drama with just some ghosts thrown in there, which is kind of like Hereditary was really a family drama with some absolute crazy.
I think that's
the best kind of horror.
Absolutely. This is, and I think you can say the same thing for something like Us. Although I know that you're not as big a fan of Us as say Mike and I, but I think or Babadook, or that there are a number, or The Witch, or The Wind. There are a number of these movies now in this current era where it's protagonist focused. It is, I think when in the 80s, I think that they made it villain focused, and so if you make a villain focused story, you're going to have a lot more killings. It's going to be more, I think that the potential, I think that it becomes more repetitive that way, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think that the iconic horror monster villains sort of petered out, was they became too predictable. And now when you do these family dramas, you're so invested in the characters. I think you can say the same thing for, again, Game of Thrones. It's like you get invested with these characters, and everybody is going, oh, I hope they make it. Same kind of a thing when you know you've got a long running show. Now, does it?
It ends. It wraps up. They did say that Netflix is doing like a season 2 in 2020, but I think it's going to be a whole different thing. Just the only thing that's going to have in common is the Hill House. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the same characters or anything like that. So we'll see. I mean, it was as close to like a perfect show as I've gotten in a long time. So I hope they don't fuck it up, but you never know. You never know. So, I really love it. I definitely think anybody who hasn't watched it should just plan a binge day, because you're not going to want to stop watching it. It's really, really good. It's good. Excellent.
Okay. So my number one, and mine's a bit of a curveball also.
All right.
But this is I think my favorite living author is Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
I am a huge fan of American Gods and Anansi Boys and Sandman. I think he's a brilliant storyteller of dark fantasy. Now, that doesn't necessarily lend itself to horror, but I think where he really, oddly enough, where he dips into horror is his children's book, Coraline.
Coraline. It is creepy.
It is, and it is bolstered by one of the great comic book artists of the era, Dave McKean, who does these twisted, disjointed, sort of creepy, spooky imagery without having to go violent or gory, is disturbing. He knows how to take a subtle shift in the geometry of the human form and make it disturbing. And, and they sprinkle that throughout in little black and white sketches through the book. And it reminds me of another artist from back in the 1970s, a man named Ralph Steadman, who did Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And if you look at that art, it is deeply disturbing stuff. It's like violence on paper. It's very interesting. So I thought, as a children's storybook, it is clearly for kids, but it is also one of the absolute best, both for books and for movies. A gateway for young kids who it's like, Mom, I want to see something scary.
Yeah, it's a perfect gateway.
Bring them Coraline, and it's. It has, and I think one of the other beautiful things is that Gaiman understands sort of a young person's psyche, in that Coraline she's bored with her life, right? Her mom and dad are boring, and she finds she does. It's sort of like Alice in Wonderland. She goes through this little portal to another world where she finds her other mother and other father, and they are. they're grotesque versions of what her parents are, but she thinks they're cooler because they will do things like they will produce food that's tasty, not healthy food, and then they will let her goof off a little, and there's sort of less restraints. But there's something, and clearly she knows there's something that's not right. But I think all kids who are pushing up against adolescence want to rebel a little, right? And certainly there's some of that element in Coraline, so you understand the mischievous kind of intent. And then her parents go missing, and she finds out that they've been captured by the evil other mother, and Coraline makes the switch that she's like, I have to mend my ways and come out and actually be the good daughter, and I'm going to go rescue mom and dad. And it's all just as a dark fantasy spin. I mean, I think Coraline is better than Alice in Wonderland. Myself.
Oh, I agree. I really like it. I love Coraline. I love the animation, and I didn't know that it wasn't really a full-on picture book, the original book. It just had drawings peppered in.
Yep. Yep. And it's a Gaiman's children's novel with Dave McKean art that's put in. I think they might have done something like a comic adaptation to it. Mm-hmm. But this is, I think, when it first came out, the book is in its original form. It's in long form. It's text heavy.
What a good choice.
And I think the other thing is that that when Other Mother turns into Spider Mother.
Yes, that's what I remember.
that point, kids were crying and leaving the theater, and I was like, yes. It's like
the kids that stay behind, right. And they're like, "This is awesome." They're going to be the new Scariest Things fans,
right? Exactly, and so and it does it. I think that as sort of the dark fantasy goes, she's Cruella de Vil meets the Alien Queen, right?
Yeah,
it is something. We're recording it on Mother's Day, and I did a Mother's Day update, and I included the Other Mother as one of the 10 best mothers in horror, because she is genuinely nasty and played by the not very scary Sandra Bullock, but she does a good job.
Really?
Yeah, so that's the voice for it, and and the other thing is I've got a soft spot for Coraline the movie because one. From a design standpoint, it's bringing back full-on Ray Harryhausen stop motion brought to the digital age, and two, this is the pride and joy of Oregon filmmaking, and although they took a big hit with the failure of Missing Link, that they have yet that kind of went floppo at the box office. So I think one of the tricky things for Laika, the film studio, is they make movies that aren't necessarily easy to. It's not like Pixar, which is like it's like Twinkies and Ho-Hos, right? I mean, everybody likes them. Actually, that's not a bad example. I think Pixar makes some really great movies. I think
they do.
More. I think. The what is it? The Pets movie that's coming out now. That's Twinkies.
Oh yeah, The Secret Life of Pets.
Life of Pets is Twinkies and Ho-Hos. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. It's like a sugar high for kids. There's nothing to it. Where Coraline, there's some meat on that thing, or some fairly rascally meat. So anyhow, yeah. I think that's
a good choice.
I think that's covered. I did a full novel. I did a little novella. I did a kid's book, and I did a weirdo, trippy short novel. So
yeah, and I got TV, I got old, I got new, and I got like kind of true crime almost with the Dead Ringers. I think this was a really good and very interesting mix, and we only had one Stephen King.
Yeah,
so,
no, it was remarkable, and no Lovecraft, and no was it Tim Matheson?
Yeah,
but
yeah, it is.
So why don't let's do a little quick recap. So what were your fearsome foursome?
So I had my first one was Dead Ringers, the David Cronenberg film based on the novel Twins by Barry Wood and Jack Giesland. Then I had Dexter, the Showtime series based on the novel Darkly Dreaming Dexter by Jeff Lindsay. That's a 2004 novel. Then I had The Ritual, the 2017 Netflix movie based on the novel of the same name by Adam Neville. And finally, the Netflix series The Haunting of Hill House based on Shirley Jackson's 1954 Gothic horror novel.
Okay. My fearsome foursome was my number 4 was Annihilation, 2014 book by Jeff Vandermeer, and a 2018 movie directed by Alex Garland. My number 3 pick was Misery, a 1987 bestseller by Stephen King, and the movie was a 1990 production directed by Rob Reiner. Interestingly enough, I think that's another case. I think when you go back to when Stephen King movies are done well, they're done. I think it has to do with a good director.
Yeah, Rob Reiner.
Yeah. So my number 2 is the novella "Who Goes There" by John W. Campbell, written in 1938, with the movie "The Thing" from John Carpenter, 1982, for which you probably heard me talk on ad nauseum. And my number 1 is the 2002 children's book Coraline by Neil Gaiman with art by Dave McKean, and the movie was the 2009 production Coraline directed by Henry Selick, who gave us Nightmare Before Christmas, this movie was nominated for an Oscar. So
awesome.
There we go. So as we
Great
close out
list.
in traditional Scariest Things ways, we're going to do some grave digging. What have you got on your grave digging list?
So, keeping in the adaptation from literature to film, I have a book that is not capital H horror. It's definitely horror adjacent, a little bit of a psychological thriller. It's a 2016 novel called I'm Thinking of Ending Things by a Canadian novelist named Ian Reid. It is a really cool and this book, you're reading it and you're like, something's off, like from the first couple pages. You're listening to a girl, she's driving with her boyfriend, like out to meet his parents at this like farmhouse, and her first thought is, I'm thinking of ending things. So she's like about to break up with this guy. Well, that, or she's going to break up with him, and you're kind of getting their story while they're in the car and then arriving at his parents' house. There's something off and creepy through the whole thing, and it has a pretty superb and unexpected ending that you are not going to see coming. I read the book twice, and I have listened to the audiobook, which is a really, really good audiobook, and kind of confirms, like, when you're reading it and you're at the ending, you're like, I think I just figured it out. And the audiobook really helps you say, yep, I just figured it out. The way the performance does it, the way it's performed. But this is about to be adapted into a series. I'm not sure what network for, but it's going to be done by Charlie Kaufman. It's got like Jesse Plemons from Friday Night Lights and other things, but he's always going to be Landry to me. Brie Larson signed on, Toni Collette.
Holy smokes.
So it's going to be big. I don't know if it's coming out in 2019 or 2020. I don't really want to know much about it, but I heard about it and was like, okay, file that away from later. I will never watch a preview. I will go in not knowing anything.
But at the same time, you've read the book, so
I've read the book, yeah. But I'm really excited. The book's awesome. You kind of want to just come in and be like, sit down and just give it to me right then. Mainline it. I don't want to build up. But
so are we going to be seeing anything on the website on this?
Possibly. I could possibly do that. He's a great writer. It's not super horror, but it's definitely fans of horror, and especially like psychological horror will definitely dig this book.
We do thrillers.
Yes, we do. And that's when I'm reading, I kind of prefer more of a thriller with a horror slant than full on
Sure.
horror. It's more interesting to me. So, yep, maybe we will see something on the website.
All right. Well, I have My Grave Digging is a movie that I have been eagerly anticipating coming out for a while. I was actually kind of hoping that this thing was going to show up at the Overlook Film Festival because it deals with some of your native resident critters, alligators. And this is Alexandra Aja's new movie that is being produced by Sam Raimi, and really that's a potent 1-2 combination.
Yeah.
It's a movie called Crawl, and it's featuring Kaya Solidario, who's gained some notoriety from the Maze Runner franchise.
Okay.
And Barry Pepper, who is
I love him
in Saving Private Ryan. He's the sniper with the haunted eyes. And they are a father and daughter who survive in a Class 5 hurricane in Florida, but have to take refuge in a house that is also being occupied by a bunch of alligators.
This is going to be fun.
It looks the advance notice on this thing is, this is if any of you went to our website this week and checked out our great opening sequences, you will see some of Aja's handiwork with high tension.
High tension.
Which is crazy nasty. So, with the combination of Aja and Raimi, these alligators are likely to be to show their carnivorous tendencies in a dramatic way, shall we say? So,
when's this being released, Eric? Do you know?
Let's see. I'm checking.
Because I was also surprised that this didn't show up at Overlook, especially since Alexander Aja's doing one of those VR immersive things.
Yeah.
Saw
July the 12th.
But, all right.
So
it's coming soon.
Well, yeah, and so I think that it should be in the can already. That they should be pretty much done with this thing. But who knows? It's not one of the big. I mean, for horror fans, it's a big thing. But for non-horror fans, it's not like It, where everybody knows the source material. I love it that it's original material. It's not adapted stuff. After we went through this whole big thing about adapted material.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to that one. So.
I agree. Good choice.
So, Liz, thank you so much for actually coming up with this idea. And
thank you.
Spending an hour or so. I think we've hit the hour and 20-minute mark. We ran on a little long, but it's been totally fun.
Yes.
I'm going to take us out with a quote, actually from one of your Fearsome Foursome. And this is the tagline from The Ritual.
Okay.
We should have gone to Ibiza. Perfect. We'll check you out again real soon.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.